I'm Michael Harrison. Welcome to another installment of Up Close, Far Out, the video series from the Talkers Media YouTube channel for communications professionals, pop culture aficionados, political junkies, media freaks, science enthusiasts, fans of radio, followers of technology, and the philosophically curious. I can be reached directly at talkers.com. If you find this show to be of interest and value, please subscribe to it as well as giving it a like. Our guest for this installment is one of the most community-minded broadcasters in radio today. A former recipient of the Talkers Humanitarian of the Year Award, this dedicated entertainer, commentator, and public servant has taken crisis and hardship in his own life and refocused them into energetic initiatives to support the disabled, the police, and citizens under various levels of hardship and siege. Our guest this week is WRVA Richmond, Virginia afternoon drive time talk show host, Jeff Katz. Let's get right into it. I just happen to have a Jeff Katz mug in the studio by coincidence. I also happen to have a Jeff Katz. Jeff, it's great to have you with the program. And I want to congratulate you for becoming over the past few years something near and dear to my heart, and that is the humanitarian aspect of radio, especially news talk radio, but just radio in general has a place in our society for the helping of people, for the helping of community. And you have become somewhat of the poster boy for that aspect of radio through your deeds. And you've been recognized by many, many authorities and sources for having done so. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. But congrats to you on forging a fabulously productive and valuable career as opposed to just a successful one. And I think that's important to point out at this point. Welcome aboard.
You are far too kind, but thank you. I appreciate that very, very much.
I just realized you've been in Richmond now since, I believe, 2013. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So that makes it with the new year 12 years?
Yes. I just started year number 13. Yes.
Isn't it amazing how time in the new century plays tricks with those of us who come from the 20th century, that 2015 suddenly became 2025 or 2013. Do you notice that, or is it just in my old head?
No, it is not. Number one, your head's not old. Your head is well seasoned and experienced. And no, it's not just you. I think about where we are 25 years from when, remember, everything was supposed to end when the calendar went from 1999 to 2000 and just all of this. But yeah, it just does seem a little different now.
Yeah, it does. And there's all kinds of philosophical and scientific and mathematical things that can be said about that. But let's bring this to some type of a timestamp, because these things have long tails. Hopefully, they'll live into the future, thousands of years, and it's an interesting time in terms of radio's role in helping people, because it is the time that we're doing this, folks, is 4:10 in the afternoon Eastern on Sunday, January 12th, 2025. And things going on in the world right now, which will be, I guess, old news sooner than later, as it seems to be, is that they're the terrible, terrible apocalyptic, to use a popular word now, fires in Los Angeles. But and I know that you've been talking about that, Jeff, but you have in Richmond kind of overshadowed by this natural disaster that we're dealing with, that's made global news, obviously, in LA. What's going on with the water in Richmond, Virginia?
Well, I'll tell you, Michael, we've been fortunate that we haven't had fires of any consequence this week, because fundamentally, until today, a little bit earlier today, we didn't have water in Richmond and in a number of surrounding counties. There was a power failure, we're told, and it's just starting to unfold now, who should have done things, where they should have been, when it should have happened. But Monday, the power plant that processes the water, cleans it, filters it, and then puts it into the system just stopped. Every filter stopped. The facility itself was flooded. I saw videos and I'm just ballparking, don't quote me on the depth, but I would say 8 to 10 feet deep the water was. It was just unbelievable and looked filthy. And it was all, the problem was compounded because the city did not notify anyone about this for 10 hours. So there was a period of time when people were getting water that was not filtered. We have no idea if it was clean, healthy, or not. And then taps just started going dry. And again, nobody knew. Hours and hours the city waited until late Monday. They sent out a press release advising people that this had happened and fundamentally, good luck. We're trying to figure out how to get bottled water.
Is there a lot of finger pointing going on in terms of the political fallout of such a negligence?
Yeah, what's happened, Michael, is that we have a new mayor in the city of Richmond. He's only been on the job for about a week, 10 days.
Oh boy.
And yeah, so there are people, of course, who oppose him politically, but everybody, I think that's a decent person saying this is not his fault. He doesn't know where the water fountain is in City Hall, let alone how the water plant is supposed to function. But we did have a mayor prior to him for 8 years, and it's becoming clearer and clearer he did not prioritize the things he was supposed to prioritize. The Richmond Department of Public Utilities was actually cited by the EPA on the federal level and the Virginia Department of Health on the state level for exactly these issues, that they didn't have fail safes, they didn't have backups, they were failing inspections, and the former mayor did nothing about it.
Very similar to what's happening in Los Angeles with the mayor being out of town,
Yep.
The governor always being involved in political crossfire.
Yes.
He's been a combatant out there in terms of his relationship with Trump. Trump's
Yeah.
pointing the finger at him. Are there similarities, in your opinion, between
Very
the
much
two
so.
situations?
Very much so. One of the interesting things, and it really does have a parallel to Los Angeles and the Los Angeles Fire Department. The LAFD took great pride in saying that the priorities were going to be this DEI sort of stuff. Well, the Richmond Department of Public Utilities, the woman who's been there for 5 years is not an engineer. And that makes her stand out amongst every other public utilities director in our region. Everybody else is an engineer. Her background was customer service, and number one on her priority list for the last 5 years has been DEI. And there are plenty of people left, right, and center saying, listen, this is not about DEI. This is not about the color of your skin. This is about the color of the water. And you had, that thing, you had one job. This was your one job, to make sure that water would come out of taps, water would come out of fire hydrants. We've had hospitals shut down this week, Michael, because of no water. It's just been an absolute abomination. And hopefully we've sort of turned the corner just a little bit, that they've got it back up and running. But now everybody is fearful. How long is it going to last?
How have you played it on the radio? I mean, this is all recent. We have a weekend here, and now you're going into it. How have you played it, if you've played it at all on the radio? And what are your plans going into this week in dealing with it, with the platform that you have?
Well, I have a great platform, obviously. News Radio WRVA is an incredible radio station, and it's important to this community. And this was the opportunity, I think, to leverage that strength. It would have been easy to make the top point, that mayor that we all hated, he's responsible for this. But that's part of the story. The number one thing for me, Michael, was finding out where, when, how we could get water to people who needed it. And my listeners, God bless them, they stepped up to the plate. They heard that people had CPAP machines and they were using oxygen and they needed a certain type of water. I had listeners driving 50, 60 miles to Williamsburg to buy cases of water and bring them back to the south side of Richmond, which is not an economically thriving area. That was the hardest hit, really. And also getting that water to people who were homebound. They were in wheelchairs. We just came through what is, for this area, a blizzard, couple of inches of snow as well as ice.
unusual amount of snow and ice for that
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, we get it every couple of years,
Yeah.
and that hit, and then this water crisis hit, and then as a result of the freezing temperatures, then there were additional water mains that broke. So I really just had the program pivot to helping first. I mean, that was the first thing because people didn't know where to go. How do I get bottled water? Using it as a sounding board to get, again, my listeners who just stepped right up to the plate and they were driving 50 and 60 miles to buy this water. Public officials that I knew on a friendly basis that would be able to say, okay, we are going to be distributing this water in this location, that location. And at the same time, but if we're doing like an ABC sort of thing, probably in the C position would have been, there's a big scandal here. And we've got to get to the bottom of it. But first, we've got to get water to people who don't have any water.
And the whole issue of water is something that, first of all, prevention and maintenance and careful vigilance and diligence and all those fancy words, who knows what the hell is coming out of the tap?
Not a clue, right?
We have such trust in these bureaucrats and these appointed officials, and in some cases elected, but they don't do anything until, the cliche, the old saying, you don't lock the barn door until the cow has already
Oh,
escaped.
that's right.
And then
Yep.
all of a sudden, we're going to make all these changes. But I have been saying for a long time, looking ahead, that I think the crises that we're facing in the future is going to be a lack of time, which we're already feeling.
Yep.
A lack of privacy, which I think threatens the First Amendment, and almost the expansion of big tech into our private lives and the control they have over our communications, almost renders the Bill of Rights too quaint to do its job in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And water wars.
Oh, yeah.
Clean water. Water is such a funny thing. We talk about crypto, and we talk about objects and items and collectibles that will rise in value, and what water is the key to life, and it's basically, we take it so for granted.
We
But
do.
I think we're facing problems.
Huge problems. You go back, you remember the Mad Max movies, right? Everybody,
Sure.
right? Oh my gosh, come on, who's going to fight over water? And you look at Los Angeles, where that huge basin right by Pacific Palisades was not filled, wasn't maintained. And it has been one of the rainiest years for the state of California, I'm told. Situation here where just very, very simple things, very basic. I don't know about simple. I'm not an engineer either, but very basic responsibilities. And they were ignored. They were simply put to the side so that something that frankly was probably a little more flashy. We're going to hire this particular person and put them in this job, or we're spending money to tear down monuments. We spent $2 million to tear down every monument. And that $2 million, I have to assure you, Michael, could have been much better spent making sure the water plant was working.
In other words, priorities, both in the allocation of budgets, priorities in terms of the conversation during elections, and priorities in terms of what the news media decides to cover are out of whack.
Totally.
Most of it are the shiny objects, distractions, emotional issues that are entertaining, but are, because talking about clean water is not that sexy until you don't have it anymore.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I think that all of this means that we have to reevaluate our priorities in terms of the conversation. For example, this big story at the end of 2024, in which Luigi Mangione shot and killed Brian Thompson in cold blood. What that revealed was how both in the election of 2024 and on the radio, in talk shows and in the media that's like talk shows, talk media, we didn't pay enough attention to the rage that's brewing in our society over healthcare, the system, and the insurance companies. That, you know, we're talking about migrants, we're talking about a lot of legitimate issues, but
Sure.
that was, you know, more like, do we want Obamacare or not? Do we want socialism or not? Do we?
Yeah.
But the system has gone so corporate, and
Yes.
the insurance companies are so strong. So I bring that up only in terms of the discussion of what we should be concentrating on. And you'll find the same thing as in the media that's in the elections. The candidates are not discussing the real issues, and the media is covering a lot of things that are really flashy, but are really not vitally important to our well-being.
Well, Michael, we go back to the days when media was dominated by newspapers, right? And what was the phrase? If it bleeds, it leads.
Mhm.
That was the front page. That's above the fold. And many of us, myself included, have done talk radio through the years that was, here's a shiny thing, here's a shiny thing, here's a shiny thing. Now let's go find some more shiny things. And we are at a point, as you absolutely are spot on when you say, there's a rage, to use your term, with a lot of things that just are not all that sexy. They're not all that exciting. It is a lot easier to say, nope, we don't want Obamacare. You get to keep your doctor. End of discussion. Well, there are a lot of people who have kept their doctor, have seen premiums go up, have seen services cut. It's disgusting on one level to think that anybody would be celebrating the murder of this husband and father. It's atrocious.
Yeah.
And then you also have to say, okay, let's take the people who are gloating, let's put them aside because they're sick people. But are there regular, real people who would never think of doing harm to anybody, but who are saying, my gosh, my insurance company just denied this medicine or this coverage for my sick child, and they're angry, and they want to be heard, and those issues are important.
Right. The anger is real and
Yeah.
justified. The sympathizing with a cold-blooded killer is just another example of things that are just not quite right
Yeah.
with our society
Yeah.
here as we enter the second quarter of the 21st century. Y2K, do you realize there are adults running around voting, having children, driving cars, buying homes who were not born yet?
I do, and
I hate to date myself, but it's,
oh,
you know, I assume a large percentage of the people watching and listening to this conversation are immigrants from the 20th century, from a
yeah.
place far, you know, we're
It is.
immigrants in this new
It's
land.
been to be such a long time, and I work with so many of them, and of course it's part of the evolution. I think in talk radio as well. You have younger people that are moving into your audience, and you're making sometimes a cultural reference that's just shorthand for me, for you, and they've got to jump on their phone and look it up. They have no idea what
Right.
you're talking about.
And because of short-term and long-term attention span problems, and the fact that stories get old based upon how many hours they've been out as opposed to how pertinent they are,
Yes.
there is there's a lack of understanding of history, and with a lack of understanding of history, there's also a lack of prognostication. Remember, futurism was big back in
Oh
the
yeah.
70s and 80s, you know,
Yes.
Alvin Toffler, the third wave, and
Yes.
everybody was talking about, no one's talking about the future, where it's sort of like in the future. As a
Right.
result, there's no preparedness. And my feeling is, and I'd like your take on it, is that we are facing a series of the largest generation gaps that we ever could imagine.
Yeah.
That the kids growing up now, as they come into, I'm talking about what they call them, alphas or something like that, Gen Z, the young Gen Zs,
Right.
the older Gen Zs, they've got their own issues. It's a brave new world even to them.
Yes.
But for the ones coming up now, the ones that millennials are having children and Xers are having children and their little kids, these kids are like aliens from another planet. They're aliens from the future. And
Yeah.
it's going to create all kinds of havoc in terms of voting. It's going to for media, for positioning radio stations, and
Oh,
all that.
absolutely.
So let's pivot
Absolutely.
now. Let's pivot to the humanitarian side.
Sure.
You're involved in helping people with the water situation. You have really built a career for yourself and set a role model situation. And I'm saying it. You've never said this. Um, of radio as a first responder, as radio as a helper, as radio as a source of inspiration and collectivism. You were recently appointed to a government position,
Yeah.
which I'd like you to tell us about in a moment.
Sure.
But I would like you to elaborate a little bit on how this came about and what role you see radio playing as an important component in keeping the wheels of society going and helping people in pain and need.
Well, I think that for me personally, what happened was having family. I mean, that really sort of brought this to the fore for me. I have always loved radio, as you know. I just think the medium is amazing, and it gets you closer to people than anything else, really. And to know that there are people who hopefully are laughing and smiling, occasionally shouting and yelling, and not so happy with what you've said, but I really began to see it as a means to help people when listeners started reaching out to me. Listeners would send me a note and say, "I'm having this problem," and I'm thinking, well, I, I'm just the guy on the radio. I don't know that I can help you, but I go back many years, and you'll recognize some names. You'll remember Irv Homer from WWDB back in the day. There was a gentleman by the name of Herb Denenberg at Channel 10. I grew up in Philadelphia. Well, those two guys actually helped people. Herb Denenberg's entire television career was helping people. And Irv Homer, as crotchety and as shoot from the hip and outlandish as he was, helped people. He actually went to bat for people. And I just thought it to myself, and it's bizarre, Michael, but I thought, you know what, Jeff, you've been your own biggest fan since you got into the business, right? I was the president of the Jeff Katz fan club. Make no mistake about it. And now, Bud, you got a chance to do something more. You've got a legitimate chance to help. And so I started taking those opportunities. And then when my daughter Julia was born, and Julia has very, very severe disabilities, it galvanized for me on a personal basis. You're talking about the future. And I began thinking, okay, I can't live in the moment here. Yes, I have to think of my sons, and I'd like them to go to great colleges and have great lives and all of the stuff we want for our children. But for Julia, Julia is always going to be with us. Heidi and I will take care of her until the day we're not here. But we have to take care of her after we're gone. And through that, I started interacting with people who had the same challenges. I interacted with people who also said, we just want somebody to know our story. And so slowly but surely, I started working that into the program. And that's where I am now. I'm in a community that I absolutely adore. I love Central Virginia. I love the people here. I love the opportunities that I have to serve those people and give a voice to families that are dealing with those issues. And I mean, my first professional career, I was a police officer in Philadelphia. And so I also use this platform, News Radio WRVA, to share the stories of police officers who are doing good work. Every month we have a special, we call it Blue Friday. And we just tell the story of one of these guys or gals doing the job. And we've got people donating prizes and presents. And I've heard from them just how much it means to them that they're talking about it at roll call. And, the Virginia State Police sends out a notice to every state trooper in every part of the state to tell them, hey, the Jeff Katz Blue Friday program this Friday is all about trooper so-and-so. And it makes a difference. It just makes a difference.
You talk about a segment of the society that is subject to stress and danger and abuse and lack of appreciation. The police. Um, it is a very, very difficult career,
Yeah,
not just for the individual, but for their families.
that's right.
So you've done a marvelous job of that. I know your background is in police work, and also I just want to throw this out. You've done a total turnaround, folks. When Jeff was a young, up and coming radio host, he was one of the one of the badasses out there. And it's like he's become Mother Teresa. It inspires me. I mean, I still am in some ways a badass, but
Right.
only kind of in a superficial, stylish way. It's kind of fun, my rock and roll roots, but you know, uh, there's so much suffering in the world, and there's so much, when people talk about radio is a great medium for when there are disasters.
Right.
And my answer to people is there are disasters every single day.
That's right.
It's not an earthquake. It's not a rainstorm. It's not a hurricane. It's not a fire. It's not a mudslide. It's not a tsunami. It's somebody not being able to keep their children fed.
That's
It's
right.
somebody dealing with disease, or somebody having a child that they have a situation that you do, that no matter what you do, it's just unthinkable. And it's challenging beyond belief. Every day is a disaster for people in the community. What a great way to use radio with that attitude, as opposed to we have to have an apocalyptic fire. uh,
Right.
and you've been doing that. What is the position that you just we ran it in Talkers a few weeks ago. I was just blown away. I mean, every day I get new things from you, from your station, from Virginia, about things you've done, awards you've gotten. You're on some type of a governmental committee.
Yes,
Explain.
Governor Glenn Youngkin, our Virginia governor, Governor Youngkin appointed me as the representative for. Well, the seat is reserved for an advocate for people with special needs, and it is the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. It is. It- it's an amazing experience. I've just been appointed. I've only had one official meeting. The briefing books look to me like the old Philadelphia yellow pages. I mean, they are thick and filled with things and legislation and opportunities to do things in this part of the state and that part of the state. It is, I was absolutely floored when I was approached by the governor's office and asked if I would serve on this board.
Hmm.
Uh, they I don't know why they thought I wouldn't. I don't know why they thought I should, except that I love this community and
Why you should is evident. I mean,
well,
that's. I mean,
uh,
why you're qualified.
yeah.
Go
Uh,
on. I'm sorry. So
no,
I'm
that's
glad.
okay.
I'm glad to see that you find it very touching and fulfilling and gratifying,
Oh my gosh,
because it's an award that isn't an award. It's a recognition.
it
But
is.
even more importantly, you say you've had one meeting. You might have some opportunities to do something of value and
Exactly.
expand your platform, which is
Yeah,
a radio station and your own media that comes out of you. Everybody is an entrepreneur in media today, even if you
that's
work
right.
at a platform.
Yeah.
But this takes it to a new level, and I'm sure that has occurred to you.
Absolutely. And it's a board which is about getting things done. It is a board that is all about addressing very, very serious issues and challenging issues. And it for me has already been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. I bring the opportunity for the board itself to have more exposure. There are people who have no idea there is a Virginia board for people with disabilities. And there are other folks who are saying, I've been fighting this battle with this little piece of legislation. This tiny little piece of legislation would make it easier for 1,000 special needs people to access this or that. Well, when you have that 50,000-watt microphone in the capital of Virginia and state delegates, state senators, governors, office staffers are listening, what a great opportunity I have to talk about that tiny little piece of legislation that just hadn't really gotten the attention it needed. And now all of a sudden people are saying, yeah, well, maybe we should do something.
Yeah, and it's consciousness raising. That's
Yes.
basically what it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you here, and just hit me to ask. I'm not ambushing you, but would you ever consider the possibility of running for office in that area because of your high profile and good accomplishments?
I would probably be more likely to run from elected office.
I'm running the opposite way.
The opposite direction.
Well,
I don't know. Over the years, people have asked,
okay, so this is not the first time that suddenly.
No, but I'm very happy with my volunteer service.
Mhm.
I'm on one or two boards and commissions, and it gives me a great opportunity to advocate for people I think are the right people to advocate for. Elected office, I would say probably not.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a fun career,
No,
and
no.
it's very hard to do it in pursuit of truth. It's very hard to get elected and be completely truthful. As a matter of
Right.
fact, our society has become so cynical, and people are so used to the BS that goes on out there that sometimes people hold it against a politician for telling the truth because they
Yeah.
must be stupid for telling the truth. And
Right.
rather than right, they're crazy.
Absolutely.
He's telling the truth, but he's crazy.
That's right.
You hear that a lot all the way
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
And I'm not voting for him because he's crazy,
Yep.
even though he's totally the only one telling the truth.
Yeah.
Um, we associate telling truth with being crazy,
Yeah.
but I've also discovered, because I'm always monitoring things and measuring things, and I'm sort of like a sociological detective. I'm
Mm.
weighing things out. I find that a lot of voters vote for people not by the level of their truth, but by the quality of their lies.
Well, the key to holding an elected office is getting elected.
Right.
And telling the truth about all of the issues doesn't necessarily lend itself
Right.
to campaign donations, getting elected. I don't know. It just seems to me that there are some fine people who run for office, and for me anyway, I'm very fortunate. I got to tell you, we've got excellent people in my area. I would have no reason to run against any of them. I
All
promise
right.
you.
Smart answers. Smart answers. As we conclude, I want to show you that I always keep this with me. This
Aw.
this is the was made by Emily,
Yep.
and this is the Julia Katz bracelet. Tell there you go. Tell our this sits on my desk. This is
Aw.
a good luck charm. I still have the the little information on it.
Aw.
Take a moment, but as we conclude, what's the story
Sure.
behind this?
It's a beautiful story. You're talking about making a difference. It's got to be about 5, 6 years ago. I got a letter from a high school student. And he said, "Dear Mr. Katz, my dad and I listen to your radio show every day as we are driving. And I know that you have a disabled daughter. I want to tell you about my disabled sister. And you need to have me on the radio to talk about it." Now, if you're in talk radio, especially, you get pitches every day. This is the right person. That's the right person. Well, this kid, because he was a kid, I mean, he was a junior, I think, or a sophomore in high school, PJ Morrissey. There was something about it, Michael, that just touched me. And I said, okay, let's have you on the air to talk about your sister, Emily. And he told me about Emily. And he told me that he and his parents were setting up this little company because Emily wasn't able to go out into the general workforce. She has cerebral palsy. She has one or two other special needs, but she does great work. She loves, as part of her therapy, stringing beads. So they set up a little company called Emily's Bracelets, emilysbracelets.com, and she makes these bracelets. So we talked about it, and we got so many people asking me, can we get a bracelet? Where do we get a bracelet? How do we get a bracelet? That is about 5 or 6 years ago. As a result of all of those conversations, Heidi and I have become great friends with Dan and Kristen, Emily and PJ's folks. The website, emilysbracelets.com. Emily has now shipped bracelets to all 50 states, England, France, Australia. When I've had the opportunity to guest host for Glenn Beck and Eric Erickson and Todd Starnes, I always grab a couple of minutes if I can get PJ on to talk about the story. And there's just great support. So Emily is now living her best life as a result of her brother sending that note to this guy on the radio. And a couple of years back, they reached out to me and said, Jeff, we really appreciate what you've done. How about we make a Jeff Katz bracelet? Well, I said, I've got a better idea. How about you don't make a Jeff Katz bracelet? How about a Julia Katz bracelet? And so these are the colors. I'll show you, and you have it there. These are the colors for an organization called the Friendship Circle. And the Friendship Circle is worldwide. It's teal and purple. And they pair typically developing kids generally with special needs kids just to be friends, to do stuff, to hang out, to maybe go somewhere, maybe just be in the house and chat about things. And so they did that. They have a musical note on there because Julia's favorite thing is music. And her, by the way, Michael, you will appreciate this as a rock guy. Now, she loves the early Beatles, but she doesn't like the later stuff. Anything past like Yellow Submarine, forget about it. She's very discerning on that. And so with every one of these Julia Katz bracelets they sell, they take a portion of it and donate it to the Friendship Circle. And it's amazing.
And there you have it, a conversation with the afternoon drive time talk show host at WRVA Richmond, Virginia, Jeff Katz. To learn more about Jeff, visit his website at thejeffkatzshow.com. Up Close, Far Out with Michael Harrison is a presentation of Talkers and a production of Good Phone Communications on the Talkers Media YouTube channel. I can be reached at talkers.com. If you find this show to be of interest and value, please subscribe to it as well as giving it a like. Our producer is Matthew B. Harrison. Thank you for listening. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved.